Thank you guys for coming. I want to thank DFW NORML for giving us this opportunity to all come together in Texas. I think it's great just to see everybody here. Like I said, I know it's your 420 and you're sacrificing that to be here, so I think that shows that we're a little more serious and we're not just about smoking, which is important to those who are not here. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So I hope that you guys will kind of take this into consideration as a different perspective, or a perspective maybe we don't talk about a lot, and a strategy that I hope you'll all join me in, because we do need everyone here. Just as a reminder, for those of us that are from Texas, we do not have ballot initiatives, which is how so many states have been successful. We also cannot change laws on a we cannot change laws on a locality level. Since '97, we have to pass our drug laws on a statewide level. And that was backlash for a group that tried to get a medical marijuana initiative in their town, San Marcos, and the backlash was that now we have to get the whole state of Texas to agree to make any kind of change. So that's huge, and make sure that you let people know that when they say, why aren't we collecting signatures, or why can't we just do what New Orleans or other cities have done and just decriminalize in Austin, because sure, they would do it. We can't, that's why. So just be aware of that, and we have to all work together. So show of hands, if everybody will do this for me. How many people are cannabis consumers? It's a lot of us, right? Wait, keep your hands up if you think we need the support of people who aren't. Right? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about, because they're not here for the most part. They're not here, right? We're only 13% of the population. That's what Keith said yesterday. So who are these other 87%? Who are the people that we know we need to convince? And what is our plan of attack? So I want to kind of just show you how we find these unusual allies, how we outrage the people who aren't being affected, or at least they believe they aren't being directly affected, how we can find them, because that's the biggest problem. How do we find them? So I have a little celebrity example of people we'll all recognize, and then an example that in real life how this happens of few people you will recognize, and at least one you won't. But basically, Ben Franklin said that nothing is going to change, justice isn't going to be served until the people that are not directly affected are just as outraged as those who are. So that's what we should be working towards. Who's our opposition? We know this guy is, right? Like the people that are outspoken, we know they're out there because they're against us. They're actively working against us and feeding whatever information that they have to people that they claim to be accurate. They're part of that 87%. But certainly they're not the entire 87% of the non-consumers, because the polls are showing us that people are in the majority favoring the changes that we want. So this guy isn't our only target. I understand we have to target him, but that's not the only one. And the unfortunate thing is, targeting this guy and people like this, the law enforcement, the conservatives, the politicians, I didn't want to use them since it's part of their job, but people like that. One of the hard parts in us trying to change their mind is they have preconceived notions. They think that we all look like a certain thing. Everybody that wants to smoke pot, everybody wants pot legal. They have an idea in their head. We know better. We know that that's not everybody that smokes pot is a rapper. You know, we know that. There's some regular looking people, but what do we need to do to convince the opposition, if that is our main or only target, which I don't believe it is, and that's my point. But what do we have to do to convince them? What's our ammunition? Who else do we have other than who they believe to be the only people that want pot? It's kind of a small picture, but that's Jennifer Aniston. So, and I don't know what she's smoking. I'm not saying that. But more and more we have the support of people who look a little more like this guy. Maybe he could relate to him. Maybe not. But we do have more support than just what the opposition may think. And more we're seeing that in real life and in celebrities. And that helps, but the opposition isn't maybe going to relate to them. Maybe they're just going to say, well, you're just a criminal too. You're on drugs. I'm not going to relate to you. So it's great that we have more and more people that are standing up, that are saying, I'm a consumer too. I might look like you, but guess what? I don't go home and drink. I go home and smoke a joint. That's great. But we need more of the people that actually don't do that to convince this guy. Somebody else he can relate to on an even different levels. Somebody he doesn't continue to think that is a criminal. And sometimes we have converts too. So part of that 87%, sometimes we get through. This Pat Robertson was an unusual ally. I think everybody was pretty surprised at that. He didn't come out and say, I decided I think marijuana is great. He didn't say I was going to smoke it. Some of our talking points finally got through, or he finally just came to the obvious conclusion that this is a failed policy. So we want more of that, and that's great. Because I think this guy can probably convince this guy a little more. We see the progression of how we're kind of getting a little more relatable to the opposition. But we can't rely on that alone, because who else is out there? Other than these few that we convert, other than the 13% of us, who else makes up the people that we see in these polls that are showing the majority? Who's our target? And I say it's the silent majority. It's the people that say they'll vote for it, but they're not going to help us get it there. They're like, oh, yeah, I'd vote for that, but they don't have a stake in it. They're not cannabis consumers, but they don't care that we are. That doesn't give them a reason to go out and advocate for you, though. So they're who I was. Until I was 35, 5 years ago, I was a drinker. I didn't care what anybody smoked or did. I had plenty of friends who were smokers, but nobody was talking to me about it. Nobody was giving me any understanding of it. I was completely unaware of any issues that surrounded it or any reason that I would have to call my representative or talk to anybody about it. So those are the people that I think, that's the landslide to our tipping point. That's who we have to find. And they're not going to come here unless you specifically directly target your friend, your family member. We can get a few of those. But for the most part, they're not going to come to our reggae show. They're not going to come to our rally. They're not going to come to our meeting or our conferences. And you know what? It's because of prohibition that we meet like this and we meet in those places. But do we really want to remain a subculture? We're in Time magazine now. It's in Money magazine. It's Forbes. It's in Barron's. This is mainstream. We need to be mainstream. We need to represent ourselves as not just cannabis consumers, but as people who just make a different choice. Find that overlap in your community where you can relate to people on something that has nothing to do with this. And then maybe they'll listen to you a little more. Plan your events by thinking about these things. Who am I attracting? What is our goal? I say we keep NORML's mission in mind. And that's our goal. Our goal is to move public opinion forward sufficiently so that cannabis use by adults is no longer a crime, right? So I try to keep that in my mind when I plan events, when I talk to people, when I represent the movement. Is what I'm doing going to move public opinion forward? Is this a task, an event, a conversation that's going to do that? Granted, we have to have these things to motivate ourselves, obviously. But we need to resonate with this group with something that will resonate with them. We need to argue points that they can take back themselves and have their own reason, just like we had to all find our own reason. Mine was that I switched from drinking, and I'm a much better citizen for it. So of course I'm going to advocate for this. That was my personal experience, but everyone can't have one. We may have to give them their reason. And we have all those tools. We have all the information and tools to give them. We just have to come up from the subculture that we're in and take our place in society where we rightfully belong. We don't need to keep segregating ourselves and show that cannabis is just one part of who we are and give them an analogy that they can relate to, a reason that a regulated market would be good for them. So we can talk about, we have all this, we know all this, but take it somewhere else. We can't coerce them or expect them to come to our environment. We want to be a part of theirs. And remember that you don't necessarily have to sell to them that cannabis is good or that it's a miracle or it's a wonder drug. You can sell to them that prohibition is bad. And that's a much more relatable argument to people who aren't consuming. We're not trying to convince them that they should. And frankly, I do believe that we should have the freedom to do it, but I also believe that preaching about why you should have the right to do something is not going to convince someone else to go and fight for your right for it. They're not going to. And I started giving people an analogy. You know, in Austin, there's a nude beach, Hippie Hollow. And I don't care that people go there and get naked, but there are probably some people that go there and get naked who think they should be able to get naked wherever they want. I could even make the argument for them if I really believed it. You know, I mean, everybody has a body. We all know what bodies look like. It's medical, it's science, your parents, your siblings. You know, I should be able to wear or not wear whatever I want. It's my problem if I have nowhere to put my change. That's not your problem. So I could firmly believe that, and I could nod my head and say, yeah, you know, get it on the ballot, I'll vote for it, sure, I really don't care. But I'm not gonna call up my representative. I'm not gonna march in the streets naked with them because, frankly, it's not a freedom that I want or I'm interested in. If I want, I'll go to Hippie Hollow. So we have to give them their own reason. So let's think about how this applies in real life. This is my grandmother. She believes in the pharmaceutical industry. She's even suspect of her doctor when he tells her she should take fish oil. So she's not interested. I try to talk to her and she doesn't want to argue with me, so she won't engage in a very much of a conversation with me. But everybody has a grandmother. A lot of them are opposed. We can't rely on just grandkids to talk to them. So, I mean, why can't we go to bingo and talk to some grandparents? Why can't we have a bingo group that targets them, you know? That's something she does. I know she goes to bingo. That's her addiction. You know, tell me there's not something wrong with you spending your money, but so that's one thing. And she also believes in stereotypes. She believes in pharmaceutical drugs, and she believes in stereotypes. She's from southern Louisiana, and she knows just by looking at people what they're all about. So, and that crosses into things that I don't even want to tell you what comes out of her mouth. But, you know, sometimes you just have to deal with it. So, some of you might recognize this guy, Dave Weinke. He's in the audience. He's a neat, clean-looking guy, right? But he's got dreadlocks. What's my grandma going to think of him? Is he going to convince her that we should legalize marijuana? She's going to, from 10 feet away, as far as she can see without her glasses, she's probably going to say, I know what you're all about, and I know why, and I know what you want to happen, and she's just going to have preconceived notions. Well, Dave is joined here today by a lot of people that maybe my grandma would listen to. Not me, because I'm her granddaughter and I don't know anything, but, you know, he is joined by some people who aren't maybe fitting that category. That's me. You stole my sign, Dave. But, and my idea. No. So, until I was 35, I wasn't a cannabis consumer. I still pretty much look the same, I think. I still have the same kind of job. I still drive the same kind of car. I still do the same kind of stuff, other than I stopped getting drunk and doing a lot of ignorant stuff that put all of you in danger and me. So we're standing next to Dave, but again, if the opposition knows what you're involved with, then they may just put you in that stereotype too. I've never been drug tested, I've never been searched, I've never been arrested. I'm here because I understand the logic of this and I want other people to also. But other people learn from personal experiences. Have a family member that requires cannabis and they convert because of that. This is Ann Lee, mother of Richard Lee, founder of Oaksterdam, that was mentioned here moments ago. She's a strong advocate for marijuana legalization. She's also a very unusual ally and somebody that might actually convince my grandmother. You know, she might could talk to her in a different way than I could, or than Dave could, or than anybody that looked like me and did the things that she would find out that we do. So, I just think that we need to consider this in our conversations, in our activities, reaching this silent majority that's voting yes on the polls, but not helping us get it there. They're waiting for the rest of us to get it there before they're going to be involved. So how do we reach them when they're not going to our sites to find out? They're not, you know, the soccer mom's not going to walk up to your table covered in pot leaves and say, tell me why I should support this. It's not going to happen. So, but we're not just cannabis consumers, are we? Right? I mean, you guys do other stuff, don't you? I try to do other stuff. I mean, if more people would help me do this, I'd have time. But, you know, I got approached. I got approached by somebody at one of our meetings, and she was there because she's an older lady and she's in a bike club, bicycle club in Austin. And she said, you know, most of our members don't smoke, but I'd love for you to come and talk to our group. Bicycle club, sure, why not? Some of them are going to be smokers, some of them aren't. So I would like to target those groups. Go to your farmer's market, you know, go walk around Town Lake and talk to people wearing a pot shirt. Get yourself out there as somebody that's not a cannabis consumer. You're just an American that smokes pot like a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, right.
So we've still got those people we're trying to target. And how do we do it? We have rallies at the Capitol. That's one reason we hope people will walk by, we hope they'll see us. But are people that aren't already doing this activity going to engage us? I think like Keith said, now is the time for something more than just the rallies. I mean, the rallies motivate us. They get us going, right? But what is that like? That's like ready, set, go, right? Where are we going? Where are we going when we rally and we motivate? What are we doing? What are we rallying for? It's the same building. Some of the same people, but this is a lobby day. Sometimes we walked by people and they didn't know what we were there for, and they'd engage in a conversation with us. A lot easier to talk to somebody that's not holding a sign and screaming sometimes. Right? You might could learn something, you might could talk to somebody. So I think that's one of the ways that you can do it is just by considering that. Am I open to a conversation with somebody who isn't doing the same activity that I am? Am I willing and able and open to that and putting myself in an environment where that can actually happen? This is one thing that Texas NORML did. We started an athletic group. This is at an Alzheimer's walk. There were over a dozen people probably at that one. This is the end, so some people had taken off. But we had kids, we had our green balloons, we had our sign. We were all wearing shirts that say Team Hope Through Cannabis with a huge pot leaf on it. That got noticed. It gets noticed amongst a bunch of people that are there for Alzheimer's. But we don't do it just in medical runs where we could actually know that cannabis could probably have an effect. We'll do a fun run, things like that that are just community related. So in closing, I just want to say that you guys are getting prepared by coming to these conferences, by going to those rallies. That's what they're for. They're preparation. This is not the work. This is the preparation. So then we have to get out there and actually do something. So I want you to not just think about planning your own events and creating an environment that you hope people will hear about and show up. I want you to search for what's going on in your community that you as individuals and you as leaders of groups will want to be involved with and can show that there is overlap between yourself and non-consumers. And then you can have that conversation. You know, join in rather than plan and invite. Let's be part of the whole instead of continuing to segregate ourselves. So I love our choir. I love the people that praise our choir. It's great. But what I would like to see is us sing it from the mountaintops so that everybody else can hear. And by that, I don't mean just yell at people. Go join a group that climbs damn mountains. Get up to the top of it. Show people that you're about more than just pot smoking. And then you build a bond, you build a foundation, you have a conversation, or you create a group that is going into their environment and bringing that message there. And that's going to resonate more. You want to give people something that they can take back to their PTA and say, did you know that we're spending more money on incarcerating people than we are on educating a child? Every single incarceration for a nonviolent crime costs more than what we use to educate one child in Texas every year. That's something that they can take back. It has absolutely nothing to do with your want, need, or desire to smoke. That's what we have to tell people. Find those common interests, participate, and relate to people. I hope you all can consider that and take that forward in your strategy, and I will see you at the after party if you have any questions.
Yes, I am!